Hey, what is up, guys? Bluntcuts here. This is a Watch Your Realms video. Thank you so much for tuning into my channel. I appreciate it. Please do like and subscribe if you do enjoy my content. I am doing yet another video on Ingrid here. A couple days ago, I did a damage comparison for single target damage on the Guild Boss 2 between Ingrid and Praetus. I wanted to test how each awakening level compared to one another. So I awakened them in conjunction with one another. So every time I awakened Ingrid, I awakened Praetus. We just compared their relative damage at these different awakening levels. I'm going to be doing something that's similar, but not quite the same today, where I'm going to be comparing Ingrid at her various awakening levels to an A5 Khamet. The reason that I have Khamet at A5 the entire time is largely because he was already A5 on the test server, so I couldn't rank him up over and over, but I can just say from my own testing that I kind of already knew that Ingrid was going to outpace him, and it didn't really seem to make sense to show his awakening levels. It's just not the same thing because he's not somebody you're going to be using soul stones on, obviously. So we're going to show Khamet at his peak. He doesn't actually gain all that much damage from his awakenings at the end of the day. I'd say the biggest one is probably his A3, where he gets that expanded range on his ultimate, which does allow him to do more damage, but it doesn't make him hit any harder. So in any case, what I did was I brought both Ingrid and Khamet into GR 121. I did give Khamet a legendary lord to compensate for the fact that Ingrid did have a legendary lord, so I brought in Venoma for him. However, I did not bring in a bunch of watchers to further enhance Ingrid's damage bonus that she gets from that, so potentially these numbers could be even, there could be an even bigger gulf between Khamet and Ingrid, but I can say if you haven't already kind of figured it out based on the way I'm talking, Ingrid cleared Khamet by a pretty significant margin at all awakening levels, but by how much is what we're going to find out here. So what I did was I brought both of them into GR 121. I made sure that neither of them got invigoration. I did bring in Dolores to buff them. However, I held Dolores's ultimate and only used it during Khamet's ultimate. So they benefited to the same amount. Now, on the flip side, I could have done it in such a way where I used Dolores's ultimate at a time when Ingrid was getting her boost. She doesn't have an ultimate per se, but she does cycle and have these damage cycles that she goes through. So I could have used the Dolores ultimate then to boost her damage, but I felt like this was a fairer way to go about it, and so I just buffed Khamet's damage there. Ingrid, of course, did still benefit from the inspiration, but if she did get it in her kind of higher damage window, that was purely coincidental. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't shortchanging Khamet in any way. Was kind of my main priority here. With that said, they're both in gear similar to what you're seeing on Ingrid right now. Soulbound Arcana on the right-hand side. We've got Warlord on the left-hand side. Close to about 300% crit damage. They both have somewhere in the neighborhood of, I believe, about plus 250% attack. They are in triple attack bonus pieces on the right-hand side, as is going to be, I think, the most common way that you're going to use Ingrid in kind of endgame content, where you are going against enemies that do have really high magic resist. You're going to need to stack as much attack as possible. Plus, she does have really high base attacks, so that is going to, I think it makes sense to double down on her strength. That is my perspective. I think, maybe further testing can be done. You can find out if crit damage at a certain point might be better. I think certainly if you're going against a lower magic resist target, then the argument to bring in some crit damage might make sense. So with that said, let me show you the run. Take you over to the spreadsheet afterwards. We'll talk through what I found out. right, guys, here is the data. This is what I found out from all of my different runs. Before I get into the discussion here, there's a couple things I do want to kind of note before we get any further in. So I only recorded data at A0, A3, and A5. Reason being that at A1, she actually doesn't get any benefit to her AOE form. It is all single target damage from the A1. So there was no point in testing that here because at the end of the day, Ingrid does not benefit in her AOE form from A1. So there was going to be no difference, or there should not have been any difference. So I did not test it. I did 9 runs. I had to do them all manually, but I did them with the exact same logic every single time. So the results should be relatively consistent. And as you can see, the numbers that I got were largely consistent. There was not a huge variation in the results here. I would say that the variations that you do see are largely going to be because maybe a heal went into a certain spot and there were enemies that were up longer or shorter as a result. But the difference between or I should say the relative difference between Ingrid and Khamet's damage was consistent, even when there was more damage in one run than the next. I will remind you guys because there were some people that didn't get it the last time, and I tried to explain it. Maybe I didn't do a good job. But at the end of the day, we're talking about in GR 121, there are 59 enemies that come out, right? Each one of those enemies has a certain amount of health. There is a finite amount of damage that can be done in this run. Now, this is not completely finite, right? You got to consider the heals that go out as well. So if there's heals that go out, then theoretically, some of the damage you've done gets, it can be redone essentially. But the enemy health is fixed. So there should be a limited amount of damage that can be done at the end of the day. So what I tried to do here was look at the relative difference between Ingrid and Khamet, meaning that I wanted to see what was Ingrid's share of damage at 1 awakening level, what was A5 Khamet's share of the damage, and I wanted to track that at the different awakening levels. When you're looking at a lot of the GR 121 testing that I've seen in the past, people are giving you flat values. And while I think that is important, I think what really is more important is the relative amount of damage that one did. So Ingrid, as she gets more awakenings, as she gets more benefit to her damage, she should be taking up a larger share of the total damage that was done. That's what I've tried to test here. That's why you're not going to see a crazy amount of difference in the totals here. If you were to add Khamet and Ingrid's damage together across all the different awakening levels, it should be similar. It should just be less damage from Khamet, more damage from Ingrid. Beyond that, I do have the breakdown of the gear that was used on this right-hand side underneath this green heading to the right over here, so feel free to peruse that. But as you can see here, the plus attack bonus Khamet actually had 2% more plus attack bonus than Ingrid did. Crit damage, Ingrid had 0.5% more. She had 1 more attack speed, Tear of Twilight, but all in all, just very, very similar gear, as close as I could possibly get it. Thank you, Moontown, for all of those different different stat changing crystals that you give to us. It allows me to kind of customize the gear to a certain extent, although I'm worried that I'm only going to end up with really good gear, and that's going to make things a little bit more challenging at the end of the day if I want to have a more modest test. But without further ado, let's talk about the results here. So at A0, what I saw was that on average, Ingrid is doing 6.44% more damage than A5 Khamet. That is super impressive. Just at base, A0 exceeding what at least one of the top 2 AOE damage dealers in the game. You can quibble about a ranking there. I think he's the top one personally, but if you want to slot somebody else in there, I think you potentially could make that argument. However, when we got up to A3, which is the big one, this is the one where when she is in her solar overload mode, so basically after 5 attacks, she gains she does a increased damage strike. I guess it's on the 5th one. It's after 4 strikes. The 5th attack is an increased damage strike that has a wider range, does more damage. I think there's a true damage component to it as well. When she does that 5 times, she goes into an overload state and she gets a bonus. I believe it's attack interval. So she gets a 25%, I think, yes, 25% attack interval reduction during the solar overload mode. And she just does crazy amount of damage. The A3, when she is in that overload mode, she does end up, instead of having 4 attacks between each of her big strikes, she only needs 1 attack. So basically every other strike that she does is going to be a widespread AOE damage in a line in front of her. It covers 1 tile to the right, 1 tile to the left, so it basically triples the width of her range, which is just crazy overpowered. Now, it doesn't come in quite as much to play in here because most of the enemies are grouped up right in front of that wall in GR121, but it is a big damage increase. And so you can see when she does have that A3, she's all of a sudden doing 29.23% damage, more than A5 Khamet. You can see his damage did go down, hers did go up. That gulf between them, instead of, whereas in the first one, she was only doing about 6 million more damage than Khamet was. In the second test at A3, she was doing almost 27 million more damage than A5 Khamet. Now at A5, she gets another bonus. She ignores 25% of enemy magic resist, which is basically gives her like a mini Silas effect for her damage in the AOE mode. She expanded that gulf even further, and all of a sudden she was doing 39.11% more damage than A5 Khamet. Very, very impressive at the end of the day. She is just a monster. And I am a little bitter I didn't get her, but, you know, it is what it is. Can't have nice things in this game, apparently. I don't get any of the overpowered heroes for the most part. So, you know, I hope that you did have better luck in your pulls. If you did pull her, you should be really happy. I think that she doesn't have a lot of complexity to her kit. She's a very kind of simple hero at the end of the day. You just drop her and she goes. But really solid damage, like across the board. Single target, AOE, super versatile, great bonus. Shitty faction, but I think, you know, over time that's probably going to change, and there will be some better heroes that get dropped into that watchguard faction. Seems like they are trying to juice it up a bit recently with the addition of Lucius. We all already got Constance in there, obviously. Ingrid is another piece of the puzzle, and I would not be surprised if we've got some more Watchers coming down the pipeline at some point in the near future. With that said, if you have any questions about anything I've said here, please do sound off in the comments. Let me know what you think. Be happy to answer any that you have, or you can tell me why I was wrong about doing things the way that I did, and we can discuss it. But in any case, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I do appreciate it. Please do like and subscribe. I will catch you all next time.